Welcome to the Smarter Money Life podcast powered by Forum Credit Union, your go-to podcast for all things personal finance, where we break down complex financial concepts into simple, actionable steps. Whether you're looking to save more, invest wisely, or plan for your future, we've got you covered. Join us each episode as we bring you expert insights, real-life stories, and practical tips to help you live a smarter money life. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Smarter Money Life podcast. I'm your host, Andy Mattingly, and today we're going to talk about getting a new car. And that could be buying a car or leasing a car. Now, there's a lot of differences between buying and leasing a car. And to make that decision, you really need to have, all of the information because there's so many unique considerations and options that really depend upon your circumstances. So today, we're going to talk with Forum's resident car guru, Bryson Murray, who happens to be the manager of our indirect sales team. So he works with dealers all over the state. Pretty sure he knows almost every dealer in the state. So I'm really excited for this conversation. Bryson, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Well, I think this is going to be really good for our listeners because almost everyone is going to be sometime in their life, usually multiple times, buying or leasing a car. And not a lot of people know about leasing, so I want to get into that today. But I want to jump right in. How can someone ensure they're getting a good deal when they're buying or leasing a car? We won't get into the differences right now, but how can they know they're getting a good deal? What are the things that you would share with people to say, hey, here's what you need to do?
Okay. It's a good question. I would say research, and I know that's probably a cliche answer, but we can get in a little bit of why. One thing that I would say as far as the research, you want to know what you're buying and what kind of the relative price of that is. Do you have a trade? Do you know how much that trade is worth going into it? Have you been pre-approved, and do you know kind of what you can afford, or you don't want to go on walking, you don't want to walk in blind, just signing things, right? You want to kind of know what's going to be healthy for your budget. Plenty of tips on knowing if you're getting a good deal, but I think it starts with research and kind of knowing what you're up against.
You said something about being pre-approved. When you walk into a dealership and you say you're pre-approved, there probably lights a lot of smiles on a lot of people's faces, right?
Yes. It makes their job 10 times easier.
Because they know that she can get you the car and they can work with the deal on you. So let's jump right in and let's talk about why buying has advantages over leasing. What are some of the reasons that buying might be a better option?
Yeah, buying, when you buy that car, you own that vehicle. You can do whatever you need to with it. If you need to trade out of it, you're not looking at any kind of hidden fees or penalties if you want to get rid of it. If you want to sell it, you can sell it. If you want to make modifications to it, you can make modifications to it. That's one of the main advantages. Again, when you're leasing, I would say it's like an extended rental, and so you don't have as much freedom and flexibility with the lease as you do with a purchased vehicle.
Yeah, and I, expanding upon this fact that you really can't customize it. So anything that you would want to do, a lift kit, tinting the windows, changing the rims and tires. I know some people are into that. You can't do any of that correctly if you lease the car?
No, and I won't say that you can't, but what I will say is that you have to return that car in the condition or similar condition that you got it. Little things, wear and tear is going to happen. But if you bring back that truck and it's sitting 4 inches higher and the windows are tinted and all of that, you're going to pay substantial penalties for it.
Okay. Now, switching it around, why is leasing sometimes a better option for certain people? Like what are some of the advantages of leasing?
The biggest advantage is typically you're going to get a lower payment. More often than not, people are leasing the brand new vehicle, so you've got access to the newest technology and features, and you're paying less monthly than you would if you bought that car. In addition to that, when you lease a vehicle, again, typically it's going to be a newer vehicle. A lot of that's going to be covered under manufacturer warranty, so if something happens to go wrong with it, you can just take it back to the dealer, kind of like if you rent an apartment. And something's wrong with your water, you just call the landlord. It's not your problem. Whereas when you buy that vehicle, it is your problem. If you don't have certain things in place to handle stuff like that, it could be a burden. Those would be the main advantages, the payment, and then having access to the newer technology at a lesser price, especially right now when, car values are kind of as high as we've ever seen them. Payments and interest rates are high. So if you're one of those people who likes to get a new car every 3-4 years or so, leasing might be a good option for you.
Something about leasing, are there different terms, or are they usually just like 30 or 36 months, or is there a range of terms that you can get for a lease?
Yeah, depending on who the lease company is, who's financing that lease. I mean, I've seen leases for 60 plus months before.
Oh, okay.
You do have options. Same thing with the mileage. People, 10,000 isn't enough. I mean, I've seen, leases where you can get 20,000 miles a year, or let's say you don't drive that much, you can go lesser and get 5,000 miles. One of the benefits to leasing is kind of you can customize that plan to fit your needs, and that's gonna vary your payment. So it's not one size fits all. You don't go in and, hey, we're leasing this vehicle for $700. Well, depending on what you need, you might be able to lease that vehicle for $500, or just for the sake of numbers and keeping it simple. And if you need more use out of that vehicle, maybe you can do it for $1,000. It still might be less than actually buying it. So.
Now, I know that some of our listeners probably are, drive with one of the ride shares or anything like that. Is there any concerns if you lease a car to do that, or do you need to buy it if you're going to do that, or was there any restrictions on those types of things?
There can be, and that's going to be up to the lease
company.
Yeah, they're going to want to know, similar to the insurance on that vehicle when you get it. They're going to want to know if you're using this for ride share, anything that can affect the risk, I guess, of something happening to that vehicle. They are
very
going
good
to want
point.
to know.
Very, very good point. And I think some people, they think they're getting a new car, but you've said this, you're leasing the car. It's not your car. So not only what can you do to it, but what you use it for is also important to remember.
Yes, 100%.
So when you're talking to people and you're helping them decide to buy versus lease, what are some of the things you want to make sure that they consider? Now, you've touched on a couple of them, but if you'd lay it out and say, hey, here's the things that you should consider when you're buying or leasing.
The biggest thing for me is lifestyle. Definitely lifestyle. So I'll use myself as an example. I drive a truck, and I like to load up kayaks and take them out to the lake and, drive through mud and all of that. And occasionally, you get some dings and scrapes. Somebody who likes to do that probably don't want to lease the vehicle that you're going to be doing those activities in. If you are somebody who, drives a lot, you want to make sure if you are going to lease that there's a mileage option, an annual mileage option that fits with what you need that vehicle to do. If you have, large pets or young children that tend to make a mess in your cars, you might want to consider buying versus leasing, because again, you do have to return that car in similar condition. And if you don't, you could be looking at substantial fees.
Yes. And the car has, and the term that you use is residual value. Will you explain a little bit about what that is? And then, because this leads right into what you were just saying about that, what the expectations are for that.
Correct. So at the end of your lease term, whether you picked 36 months, 60 months, you name it, once you pick your mileage and all of that, they're going to know roughly what that car is worth at the end of the term before you drive it off the lot, before you've done anything to it. So you do a 60-month lease, they can look and say, okay, at the end of 60 months, after you've driven it X amount of thousands of miles, your car should be worth X. That is the residual value. At the end of that lease, you can, of course, buy the car for that, residual value plus any applicable fees or something like that. A lot of people will simply just turn the car in, but that residual value lets them know how much the car is worth. So if you don't want it, they know kind of what they can expect to get out of it should they want to sell it. If you fall in love with it and you want to buy it, you already know up front what that car should be worth and how much you're going to need to buy it out for. So that would be your residual value, is what's left over, the value left over at the end of your lease term.
Okay. So, when you hear the ads, they always say, so much a month and this due its signing. Like, what kind of things do you have to bring? Like, is there down payment, or maybe it's not that, but when you're leasing, what are some of the fees, and what's like, probably can't give a typical amount, but there will be some fees that you have to have some cash, correct, or something?
Certainly. And especially for those promotional rates, this due at signing, for example, look at that like a down payment. If you're buying a car, same thing.
Okay.
It's going to go to pay down that usage fee.
Okay.
And what you're paying over the length of it. A couple of fees that you do need to be aware of. There's usually an acquisition fee, and that's a fee that you pay to take on the vehicle. If you, at the end of your term, you're going to have typically a disposition fee. That's to get out of it, whether you want to buy it. These things can vary depending on what you want to do. There's going to be your wear and tear. So, some leases will come with like a waiver, for example, and they'll say, okay, those little shopping cart dings and, replacing tires if the tires are worn, we'll give you up to it's included in your lease, $1,000, $1,500 to take care of the little stuff. Anything beyond that, that's when you start getting charged. So, the fee to actually get into the lease sometimes can offset and compensate for that. But those are the big ones that you really want to look for. You want to look at the fees associated with going over mileage. Usually it'll be like 25 cents for every mile. Doesn't sound like a lot until you've gone over, 10, 20,000 miles.
Yes.
And then you could be looking at a big bill at the end of that. So
yes.
Those are the main ones that you really want to look for.
So you've talked about getting out of a lease, and it's a question. When you own a car, you stop driving it when you trade it and get a new car. But with leases, like, do you have to turn it in on a certain day, or is it that you have a little bit of time to either get a new lease or what? Like, so how does that work? What's your timing there? Is it like I could drive it till this day and I get rid of it, or is it, hey, you've got a window a couple weeks before, a couple weeks after, it's in this time frame?
Usually what's going to happen is, there is a date, right? So when you do your lease, that term is typically going to be in months, right? So you know exactly when you need to turn that in. But to ease the process and so that you don't maybe miss that date and you're still driving for a week and get penalties, usually the company that you lease with will call you. Best time to get out, I would say most people recommend a few months before. So they might call you 90 days before that lease is up, and then maybe the month before, and kind of they will talk to you about what your future plans are. And then if you do want to turn that vehicle in, you don't want it anymore, you want to trade it, they will arrange a time for you to do so, to come in and settle all that out. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. People will be in your ear when it comes time, because most of them, they're going to want you, if you're at a dealership and you went through them and they're financing through the captive, they want to put you on another car. Whether you're trading that lease in and buying something or trading it in on another lease, they want to put you on another car. So when you get close to the time where, your term is up, they will be calling and reaching out, I assure you.
So staying on leases for just a couple more minutes here, can you only lease new cars, or are there some used cars that you can lease as well?
Yeah, there are some programs out there for used cars. They usually come with different terms. Like some of them might have miles at inception. They might have a limit. So they'll say, okay, you can lease used cars back to this date, but only ones that have 50,000 miles or less, or 20,000 miles or less.
Okay.
Something like that. I would be careful with it when you lease a used car, even though it's a lease. A lot of the damage and repairs and maintenance is not going to be covered because there's no more manufacturer's warranty typically. There's no, if you're beyond that 36,000 mile, 36 month, type of deal, that's going to fall on you. So a lot of times they will offer you service plans, and most people think, oh, well, I'm leasing, I don't need one. Well, that may be true for certain new cars, not always true for the used.
That's a very good point, because you could be out of that window if you leased, and then the transmission goes out, it's you.
And yeah, it's on you.
Okay. So if you're buying a used car, we're going to switch to buying. What would you tell people? This is my process or my steps to make sure what you should do when you're buying a used car.
Certainly. So there are some things that you can do. Well, there's quite a bit that you can do, but it all starts, in my mind, with research. Okay. Certain model years, for example, are going to have different known issues. depending on what you're looking at. It might be the same brand and same, technically model of vehicle, but if you get online, do some research, they'll say the 2012 through this year has this problem or something like that. So you want to be aware and know what you're getting into before you actually make the decision. When you're buying a used car, you definitely want to check the condition of it. There's some tells. Some of you may have heard this before, but a lot of times you can look at certain things like the interior, and you can tell how well a car has been taken care of by the way, the interior of the car looks or under the engine bay. Did somebody really care about this car? Does it look like it just drove off the showroom floor, or does it look kind of, rough? Give you an indicator. If they didn't take care of the interior, they likely didn't keep up on the maintenance and things like that. Not always true, but it can be an indicator. That's a couple of the big ones when it comes to used vehicles. Again, you want to make sure that you are equipped to handle, because again, once you buy that car, it's yours. Most of them are sold as is, meaning, if you drive off the lot and around the corner and something breaks down, the dealership really has no obligation to do anything about it to help you out. So you want to do your research. There are some cars out there that's like, man, when that thing was new, there's like a handful of people in the world that could afford it, and now it's, $30,000. Well, there's a reason it's $30,000, because it's maintenance intensive. I'll tell you one of my favorite cars, and I'm not going to say what it is here, but I found out that I could buy an older one for a reasonable price, but to change the starter requires the entire motor to come out of it. So
Yes.
Think about that.
Yes.
A couple $100 part that might cost you thousands in labor. So those are things that you want to look out for. You want to know what you're getting into.
So when you walk into the dealership, what are pieces of information that you think you should be armed with, that you would tell all of our listeners, be armed with these things when you're going into the dealership? When you're buying a car, you have a car to trade in.
Yes, know the value of what you're buying. Kind of know what that car should be priced at. A lot of times, especially if it's popular, they'll do like a market adjustment where sticker's $50,000 and they want to charge you $55,000 just because. You want to look for stuff like that. If you do have a trade, you'll want to find the book value of that trade. And what I mean by book value is what it's actually worth and what dealerships understand it to be worth. Not the sentimental value, oh, this is my first car, so I think it's worth $10,000 more than it is. You want to know what the market value of that vehicle is. And there's several different ways you can check that. Some people like to use Blue Book. You'll hear Black Book. You'll hear NADA values. One thing that I recommend is if you already have a financial institution that you trust, get in touch with them. They typically have the tools to do this. So they're going to want to know the VIN number, mileage, and any kind of special equipment on that car, like a sunroof. Does it have leather seats? All the bells and whistles. And you can give them that information, and they should be able to pull an accurate value or at least a range. So that you know what your trade-in is worth. So if your car's in a little bit rougher shape, you can knock a little bit off of what that value is. If your car is in pristine condition, you might get a couple $100 more than what that value is. But the more information that you have, the better. That way you're not taking advantage of it.
That makes sense. And one thing, and kind of want to get your thoughts on this. Sometimes people get caught up in how much they're getting for their car and don't think about how much they're paying for the car. And I try to tell them, and we'll see if you say the same thing. What matters is the difference. And if they give you a little less for the car, but they're charging you a little less for the car, you're actually going to save because you're not paying sales tax on that, right? Some of those things, like if you can bring all of this down. So I always try to tell people that you have to look at both sides of the equation. Do you agree with that synopsis?
I 100% agree. I've seen it before. It's like, okay, this person's really fighting me on the value of their trade. Okay, we'll give you $500 more. And then they end up paying $2,000 more for the car to compensate for the $500 in trade. Well, you just lost out on $1,500. But in some people's mind, okay, well, they gave me X amount, and they think they're getting a really good deal. So you are correct. You need to pay attention to both sides of that, 100%. And that's where checking the value of what you're purchasing is really going to help you, because you know what that car is worth. And if they try to increase the price on you, then you kind of know that they're outside of
the range. Okay. So what is, if you were going to give our listeners, here's the top things to do when you're buying or leasing a car to make sure you get a good deal. Because I know you've said before, people sometimes ask you if you've gotten a good deal. And after they've done the deal, it's kind of hard to say, well, maybe you didn't get a good deal. So let's get our listeners to get a good deal before they finalize it. What are some of your great tips that you recommend that people do?
Well, first one, I'm going to piggyback off of what you just said. You can't ask after you sign the paperwork whether you got a good deal or not. So while you were there in that finance office and you were signing that contract, the best thing that you can do is read everything. Two things specifically, your contract and your bill of sale. That's going to list every product and every fee and every additional add-on that's been kind of packed into that deal. If you are unclear on anything, ask. They are legally required to explain it to you. They cannot sell you something and not tell you what it is or how much it costs. So ask questions. Don't be afraid to. This is their job. The other thing I would say is try to avoid that feeling of sunk cost. Well, I've been at the dealership for 4 hours. Let me just sign and get it over with. If it's not the deal you're wanting, not looking for, you are well within your rights to walk away. You don't have to sign for something just because. Don't feel bad about, I've wasted their time. It's your time too. So avoid that. Again, the more research that you've done, the better off you're going to be, the better equipped you are to go in there to really negotiate a deal. But if you don't have some of these little pieces in place, you have no frame of reference. You can't even begin to negotiate. So that's what I would say is probably the biggest things. As far as buying a car, if you want to get the best deal, you can wait for specials. They advertise all the time. You'll see it on TV and YouTube and, hey, we're doing this blowout sale. There are certain times a year where the newer model cars are coming out and they're trying to get rid of the old inventory. You're likely to get a deal there. Sometimes they'll run, special financing options, or they'll throw things in, or they'll throw in a maintenance plan. You can wait for stuff like that, and sometimes it's best to do so.
Yeah, there's sometimes the dealerships that around the Super Bowl or NCAA tournament or something, they throw in a big screen TV, right?
Yes.
There's always all those little things to look at. Now, if you're walking into a dealership and you meet the salesperson, do you want to tell them how much you can afford, or do you want to find out what the deal is first?
Okay, so my recommendation, and a lot of this just comes from experience, a lot of it actually comes from my father. I would first negotiate the price, okay? Settle on a price. Then I would try to bring in, by the way, I have a trade and things like that. Reason being, if they know that you have a trade, they might try to increase the price to kind of offset and maximize their profit. Know what your credit is. You can check that. Again, if you have a financial institution that you trust, get a copy of your credit report. That way you know where you stand. And you can kind of shop around for rates. Maybe ask them about getting a pre-approval, or what am I looking at if I'm going to get this year vehicle for this term. And they should be able to tell you based on your credit. And that way when you go in there and you get ready to sign papers, you're not signing for something that's like 2 points higher in interest than what you actually qualify for. Going along with that, I would never offer up my budget, how much I'm willing to pay or how much I can pay. Reason being is, they've got options. And without getting too far off in the weeds, if you tell somebody that you can afford $400 a month and they come back with $370, well, in reality, you might have been able to get that deal at $320 a month. You think you're getting a good deal, but the best deal would have been that $320. And because you're not aware of your options, $50 is pretty much straight profit to the dealership. So you want to pay attention to that, and I wouldn't freely offer up that information.
Yeah, that's good advice. One of the things that I like to do and I don't buy that many cars, but when I do buy cars, I'm usually buying a make and model that there's a lot of them, right? So I like to pick 2 or 3 dealers that I know that have a good reputation, but also that have inventory. I don't want to go to a dealer that has 2 left on the lot. I like to go when there's several to choose from. And it's not because I'm picky about the color. I've had every color of a car there is, because that's not important to me. What's important to me is, getting a good vehicle, getting a good price on it, a good deal and everything. So I like to do that and then go and talk to those 2 or 3 dealers. I just say, I'm looking. What do you have? I know what they have, but I want to know what they have. And I love going on Friday nights and doing that reconnaissance shopping about half an hour to 45 minutes before they close. Because you get a salesperson that's going to call you back on Saturday and say, hey, do you want to come in and look at it? Yeah, I do. They know then that you're going to want to make a deal, but I've had 24 hours to think about where we might be. Because I love this idea of having a 24-hour rule before you spend anything, even if you're planning on doing it. Because I just think that helps both sides to say, well, yeah, he's serious because he was here and he's willing to come back, but also helps me to say, well, they're serious because they called me and they want to get rid of the car. So
true, and I like the idea of that 24-hour rule too, because buying a vehicle is not a light decision. We're talking thousands of dollars. You don't want to rush into it. You don't want it to be emotional, and you don't want to, we've all been there. It's new, it's shiny. I want it. Let me just hurry up and sign so I can get my keys and go. You don't want to be that person. You really want to take your time with such a heavy purchase. And then again, you are right about asking around some dealerships that you trust, who's got the inventory. A lot of different dealerships are going to have different incentives too. This might just be something that group or that store happens to do.
Yeah.
Hey, we'll throw in, a maintenance plan, or we'll throw in free oil changes for X amount of time. They've all got pros and cons to them. So really taking your time, like you said, doing the reconnaissance on maybe a Friday night or something like that. Keeping your options open. That way you don't kind of feel stuck.
Yeah. And, I think it's important for our listeners to know there's a lot of great dealerships out there and a lot of great people that work in the dealerships. And so I enjoy working with someone who's working to help me get to where I want and show me different things. And we'll talk about the car. I think that's important, too, is that you have a relationship. I mean, you're spending a lot of money and, for the first week or two, you may have some questions. Like the latest car I bought has all the fancy gadgets. It's like, 8-year model years newer than what I've ever had. And I had to go back in and say, I'm not exactly sure how to work this. And, the dealership was happy to help me with it because they were like, well, I sold him a car. He's going to be back someday, versus the dealership that's like, you just figure it out, go online. I wanted hands-on because I felt like I just spent a lot of money. So
exactly.
And so you agree it's kind of also important about the dealer that you work with and the reputation, because there are some really good dealers and good people working in the dealerships out there.
Yeah, 100%. I would actually argue that most of them are trustworthy and reputable. They care about that reputation. They really do. I've seen a lot of dealers do things that they don't have to, bend over backwards, exhaust all options for folks. And sometimes it's not even the dealership's fault, but they want to be there to help you. There are some bad apples out there, and, I'm sure we've all heard the nicknames they call the dealership the stealership, but most of them really are trying to put you in the best position that they can. So, for example, we talked about, maintenance. If you're not a grease monkey like me, might want to hear them out when they talk about that maintenance plan or that service contract. Some of the newer cars, especially with all the electronics, one thing goes wrong, you might not be able to drive your car.
Yes.
And are you equipped to work on it? I can get my dad's 70s, 442 probably running, but some of this stuff that's come out within the last couple of years, you need some special tools and equipment. And if you're not ready for that, they really are just trying to lay out the options. That way you are protected. Because, again, the reputation matters, and they want to make sure that you're taken care of.
Well, Bryson, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge today. And I hope our listeners listen to all the things that we talked about. You've given us some great tips to think about, leasing, buying, and then just how to work with dealerships on a solid relationship. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it. This was fun. And if you have questions in the future, I'm always around.
Yeah. So if you're on the market for a car anytime, make sure you come and check with us, because Bryson's always here, and he is the resident car guru. I could tell you he knows more about cars than I've ever known in my life. So thank you, Bryson.
Thank you.
That's all for this episode of the Smarter Money Life podcast. Thank you for joining me. I hope you found our discussion helpful and inspiring. You can find more resources on the Smarter Money Life page at forumcu.com. Remember, making smart financial decisions is a journey, and every step you take brings you closer to your financial dream. Be sure to tune in next time for more tips and insights on managing your money. Until then, stay smart and financially savvy.